No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. I'm your host, Swamp Swimmer, and with me, as always, the chess to my checkers, Vespacian.
That's a good one. Okay. Hey, everybody. How you doing? I'm surprised we haven't done that one.
So, you know, I have a really off-the-wall question for you. With the new Orcs and Goblins book coming out, my question is, how do you feel about playing armies with models that are not associated with them? And I have two examples for you here. One, I have a Beast Herd army. What if I used all Beast Herd models to play an Orc and Goblin army? So that's the extreme. Okay. Or, for instance, what you do with your elf models, you have kind of like a mix of Dread Elf, Highborn Elf, and Sylvan Elf, and you kind of mix them all together and use them, in theory, in all three different armies. How do you feel about that in a tournament setting? And of course, in casual play, who cares? But like in a tournament setting, because I'm kind of interested in like the new Orcs and Goblin book is awesome. I want to try it out. How would you feel about if you walked up to a tournament and I was playing Orcs and Goblins with Beast Herd models?
I think I'd be fine with that. My big thing is, can I tell the difference? Right. So the one thing that I don't like is I'll be like, walk up and, okay, here is a unit that is very different from this unit, but the models are identical, right? So like, I think there was one time where, it was like, maybe it was Warriors where there, all of the Warriors models were identical, but it was like, this one's Pride and this one's Lust. And this, it's like,
as long as you can,
I want to be able to tell the difference.
Yeah. Right? As long as you can distinguish which model is which, you're good, but you're not necessarily beholden to like WYSIWYG.
No. I mean, like, if I think I would caution sort of like, if you're going to use both, I don't know what they're called now, Young Bloods or Barrels or whatever it is, but like if you're going to use both Barrels and Iron Orcs, don't just use Wildhorn models for both, right? Even though the base says that's okay, like the Iron Orc ones should have some armor-looking stuff on them, like long horns, right? And then the other ones should have wild horns. I don't know, that it's kind of it needs to be basic, but it needs to be there, I guess, to differentiate. Because
I definitely have two different kinds of wild horns and long horns, but in the book there's feral orcs, common orcs, and iron orcs. I can make it. I don't know. Just a thought.
I feel like that could get confusing if you're using all of those but only have one or two different types of models. Then you're sort of like, oh no, don't forget, like this is slightly different. But I don't know. That's my take.
Okay, well, look forward to that. I might be showing up with an orc list or an orc or a warborn list at a tournament, but we'll see. Cool. But let's get into the battle report. We are into Vespacian's round one of Silicon Hammer 2023, San Jose, California. Exciting, very exciting. So I think I alluded to this before, to your last game in the Masters battle report. You are bringing back the Highborn Elves, and you get paired into our good friend from the Sacramento area, Daryl, on his gosh darn pain in the rear dwarves. God, I hate dwarves.
Well, the real tragedy of this is that I actually was not paired into Daryl. I was paired into somebody else, and then we had a drop. And because of that reshuffle, drop at the last minute, I ended up kind of defaulting to playing Daryl because his opponent was the one that dropped. So the real tragedy is that the gods of fate did not actually pick Daryl for me in round one, but I ended up with him anyways. Which fans of the channel will know this is not the first time that I've paired Daryl's dwarves.
We've both played Daryl a few times. You were initially paired into the Ringer, which I didn't like because you're a highly skilled player and you against the Ringer doesn't make sense. So actually, it's not that bad. You got into Daryl. I don't feel that bad about it.
I'm sure you don't.
Okay, let's do a deep dive into your list here. Just start from the top and go on down and give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is the Highborn Elves. I'd say overall concept behind this list is pretty strong shooting, two very, very strong characters.
Yeah.
So the two princes up at the top, they're kind of a feature of the list. Another one, and this was my stock ticker name, but no BSB.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a departure. I honestly think only the last time I ever ran without a BSB was when I was playing demons. So this is a bit of a departure, but the truth is that this list doesn't grind, right? So it doesn't need to sit in combat and pass, rerollable leadership checks. And the fleet officer honor on the Griffin gives you minimized panic checks when you're within the inspiring presence bubble. So basically they're on minimized 10s, which is you essentially have to roll double 6s to fail that.
Yeah.
It's pretty stable. I think it's like 98%, which is actually, I think, the same as a rerollable 9, for example. So pretty stable. We got the 3 flyers, the 2 phoenixes, and the griffin, and some sort of zoning pieces with the reaver chariots, and lots of champions to try to pick up the challenges if I can. So overall, pretty shooty, really mobile. Like this list can completely redeploy, essentially, and has a lot of shots overall. It's like 45 shots plus the reapers. So
yeah, definitely this is a shooty list, and your counter charge is in the characters and the phoenixes. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, I feel like this is a pretty large departure from you. So this is we'll see how it performs.
Yeah. I can struggle a little bit with some missions. The scoring is not particularly robust, right? So hold the center, can be tough for it, for example. But yeah, it's very, very mobile. So we'll see how it plays out.
Gotcha. And you are the damn dwarves. He's running a big bad king, of course, on a war throne, a Thane BSB, with a little bit of a different build. 2 runic smiths, which is interesting. 30 graybeards, so a big block of beards. 3 times 10 clan warriors with great weapons. He loves these small sticks of clan warriors with great weapons. 30 deep watch, another big brick. 6 hold guardians, that's a big brick. 14 seekers and 2 vengeance seekers.
Yep.
Pain in the rear. I completely forgot to put in your little pre-game analysis thing from your email into this, so we're gonna you'll have to do it. Talk it out. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are at play here. One, with the Ring of the Pearl Throne, I could consider actually going into that king brick because I can shut down his cannonball weapon.
That turns off his hand weapon, all the runes on the hand weapon, right?
Correct. Yeah. So he becomes a lot less scary. At the same time, I live by the adage that you never go into the king's brick.
Don't kill the kings. Don't kill the king.
Never a good idea. If with that kind of a strategy, I think this is like a yellow matchup for me. I think it's really hard for me to get the big points, obviously, but I think I've got plenty of tools to pick up kind of the soft points around the center of it. So he also has no shooting, so he has to get into combat to get points. So kind of my going in approach for this in a normal mission would be avoid the main combat block, pick up the points where I can, and try to at least draw or win the objective. And that's complicated a little bit because this first game is blind deployment spoils, right?
Yep.
Which is, I think, actually kind of generally advantages his list because he's got 3 really tough to shift blocks that I think, my concern was that he would essentially just push the king's block up on the center and use those other 2 big blocks to secure the second one, going for, an objective win on his side and be kind of tough to crack that corner. So that was what I was worried about going into this, and so I think I had it as
a yellow. Okay. Makes sense. This first image you have up, I think, is kind of funny. This is, you can see the divider. This is, I don't know, kind of upside down. Let me actually turn this. There we go. That's better.
Oh yeah.
The divider's on the left, which is kind of this curtain, and this is his half of the board. This is what you were looking at before he deployed.
Yeah, so I took a picture so that I could kind of have it for reference. Obviously, we have the map, right? So they used the actual like terrain maps, which was nice. But I just wanted it for reference to, so as I was thinking about where I put my stuff. So,
but let's just jump ahead to deployment and vanguards.
Yeah. So what I did was, and I think I kind of correctly assessed that the left-hand side of the table, I think because of the hill and the positioning of some of the terrain, would be the harder side for Daryl. And so what I did was I put my Lancers over there, and I figured that would be my kind of like my free objective. I would go, the Lancers would grab that, retreat, and basically not play a part in the game other than grabbing the objective.
Yeah.
I deployed pretty centrally, right, with the, knowing that my Phoenixes and Flyers can reposition pretty easily. And I wanted to kind of threaten that center. I wasn't sure what he would do, so I wanted to have a scoring unit there, which I've got the Sea Guard. So my 2 Phoenixes, the Griffin, I've got the Prince behind the Griffin, it looks like, just being flexible. Again, he's got no shooting, so I don't have to worry about that. One of the Sea Guard units, the Huntsman Prince, the Reavers Archer unit in the back, then I had to use the 3 Greek gods as the Reaver chariots. I'm still working on my models there. But again, going back to your point, right? It's three models that are unique, different from everything else, and I'm not kind of multi-purpose using them, so I felt like that was okay.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit
Zeus
of a gray area.
is the champion.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a gray area because it's not like it's people standing. It's not like someone writing something.
Yeah.
But as long as you're making the balls, it's fine.
No, fair enough. And then the other Sea Guard over on the right-hand side, basically, my thought process was if he dropped heavy on the right, I could redirect all of my resources over there, start withdrawing, and I had a threat to go after that spoil, essentially. So I felt like it was a fairly symmetrical, but gave me the ability to push into the objective if I needed to. And then Daryl did what I was worried he would do, which is that he basically put the King's Brick directly across from the center marker, and sort of heavily corner dropped with all of his other resources over on the right hand side. Yep. So he's got the King's Brick with all of the characters in it in the center. He's got one of his dwarf units behind it. I'm not sure exactly what he was doing there with that. Maybe backup scoring for the center. I don't know. And then he's got his Seeker Brick there. He's got his 2 Vengeance Seekers in front of it. You can kind of see. Yep. The big Greybeard unit. I think there's 6 wide. The Hold Guardian unit. And then he's got his Vanguarded, the 1 unit of Vanguarded Dwarves that he's Vanguarded up. I won first turn. So he's Vanguarded, then I'm up basically to make it hard for me to advance in the spoil, essentially.
Yep, makes sense. So you said you got first turn, though?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. So this is top of 1 movement.
Yeah, so you can see that he's Vanguarded up his King's Brick, right, straight forward, which I expected him to do. What I did was essentially the Lancers on the left, pushed up onto the objective in the lee of the hill, so they were perfectly safe over there. And then my Phoenixes and Flyers all just sort of pushed up around the line of sight of the King's Brick. He basically wasn't zoning anything in that kind of center between the King's Brick and the hill.
Yeah.
So I just put them over there. I did charge his Vanguarded Dwarves with my chariots.
I see this.
And
yes.
Yeah, so my thinking here was pretty obviously I'll win that. He doesn't really have many attacks back. he is likely to be either auto breaking or on a very, very low leadership check, and then I can just flee with the chariots after that. So
I really feel I don't know if that's a guarantee. They are dwarves with great weapons. I don't know. We'll see.
They
are,
but I'm putting 2d6 impact hits and essentially like 9 attacks into them. And I also have almost nothing else to do with my magic in the first turn, so a strength buff is very viable.
True.
I felt like there was or hereditary to stop the damage coming back. So I felt like this was a fairly. I actually thought that he might just flee this, but he didn't. So he stuck it. So then I moved the huntsman chariot prince over. Basically I'm saying that all the action is going to happen over on the right hand side of the board, and I just essentially just adjust my 2 scoring units in the middle to either leave long charges or flee paths against the king's brick. Essentially. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yep.
All right, cool. This is bottom. This is his movement.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So shooting, I think I mainly targeted where I could the Vengeance Seekers and managed to sneak a wound or 2 through on them. There was a couple, I think like my leftmost bolt thrower maybe could only shoot at the King's Brick and just like plinked a wound or 2 off there. Nothing too substantive, but what I did do was I did break and then restrain on his brick. So it went basically as I expected. I think I did 6 or so, maybe 7.
There's 3 guys left. 3 guys left. Yeah.
Yeah, and he fled, and then I restrained and fled from the ensuing charge from I think the Vengeance Seeker. It looks like, or maybe the Greybeards. So pushed me over there, and it was, you could see from where he was in his first turn, he didn't really have a way to catch them. So felt pretty confident with this positioning overall. And then he essentially just shoved his Hold Guardian straight up.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you can see there. He moved his, I don't know, I can't remember if he failed a charge with his King's Brick or what it was, but basically like they didn't move very much, you can kind of see. And then he didn't really move much other than moving his Vengeance Seekers around. He left his Seekers in the back facing, from our perspective, left. I think he was just trying to kind of deny me that area in the back there with my flyers.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I was perfectly happy with that because all the action's on the other side, right? So
yeah,
that gave me a lot of different options. So yeah, that was his movement, and then he had no shooting and we had no combat, so it went to my turn.
Pretty quickly. Top of 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so I bring, as mentioned with where he put his Seekers, I bring the 2 flyers over onto the hill. My Flame Phoenix was kind of the furthest left of my flyers, and so it's bouncing around in the back.
Yeah,
it swept that unit, maybe hoping for a lucky panic check, and is positioning itself to kind of come around the following turn. Essentially, you can see the base over there
right
in the
here,
back next to his. And I was able to find great spots in the hill for my bricks. His little stick of dwarves didn't flee very far, so that was fortunate for me. Like I think if they'd rolled maybe like 7+, they would have gone over the Greybeards. But as it is, they're chaffing his unit and rallied, right? So that was kind of nice. And then I rallied my Reaver Chariots, right, on a minimized 10, and I brought everything. I brought the Reavers over for chaffing. The following turn, everything else was out of arc, right? So felt like I was in a good spot at this point, kind of in control, and all of my resources are now centering in over on the right. And I set up my scoring units in the middle. Basically, was going to go for a double flee here. He could charge the Sea Guard. I'd flee over the archers, and the archers would flee over the Sea Guard. And I just was happy to have his brick kind of sitting in the middle there, doing nothing basically all game.
Exactly, yeah.
So then I think my shooting focused in. I kept plinking away at the Hold Guardians because they were sort of in the most threatening position, and I think I maybe did another wound on a Vengeance Seeker, but not a lot. my two Seaguard Reapers over on the right-hand side were, at this point didn't have amazing targets. I think looking back, I sort of wish I'd started moving them, because they just, taking a Deep Watch off just doesn't really do much in the overall strategy of the game.
Yeah.
But, to be honest, there's a kind of a lot of line of sight issues over on the right-hand side with the hill and everything like that. So I don't know that they would have been adding a ton of value anyways, but as it was,
true.
They didn't have a huge impact on the game until a little bit later. So, yeah.
All right. This is bottom of 2.
Yeah, so he did a couple of things. You can see my double flea with the 2 units, happy to have his Kingsguard brick there. And then it looks like, it looks like I did maybe 1 or 2 more wounds to the, sorry, I'm just looking at where I'm at on the
Yeah, I don't see a whole, I don't see a whole lot taken off the board. Both the Vengeance Seekers are still there?
Yeah, I think I've done like a wound or 2. Anyways, I haven't been able to do a ton with the shooting, and maybe I'd done like a couple wounds to the whole Guardians. But basically, he moves the whole Guardians up over there. I think he charged something, maybe a Vengeance Seeker at the Chariots, and they fled again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he didn't do a whole lot else. It looks like he marched up his dwarf unit that was getting swept and irritated by the Phoenix, and otherwise not a ton else. So this turn was fairly uneventful for him.
I'm surprised he didn't push the Hold Guardians harder. Could he have gotten out of the arc of the Griffin?
No.
Yeah.
No.
That's why he kept him there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Top of 3.
Yeah, so it was funny. At the end of the game, Daryl said, look, I just expected you to dance around me the whole game and not fight a single combat. But, at this point, I proved to Daryl that, we could get into some combats here. And I did a lot of charges. So basically, I was looking at a couple of things here, and I liked some opportunities. So one was I saw that my Seaguard could charge this Vengeance Seeker, and he had, at that point, 1 wound left on him.
Mm-hmm.
And they could then overrun into the remnants of his Dwarven, his little dwarf unit there, right?
Yeah.
And that, presuming I break them with the Lion Chariot Prince and the Seaguard unit in the flank, would actually allow me to sit on the objective with the Seaguard.
True.
Essentially with no counters, right? And also, it's a little bit hard to see, but based on my positioning with the Huntsman Prince, I then would be able to, with the, either position and chaff that, that Vengeance Seeker, to defend the Seaguard, and also be out of line of sight of the King's Brick. Yep. I actually thought this might be a chance to sneak a win on the secondary objective right there. And then I had positioned, and this will come up in a second, so we can talk about it, but I'd positioned, so you can see where I've got my Reavers there. Those Hold Guardians are in the front of that Reaver unit, right? Mm-hmm. And quite, they're an inch away from it, right? So chaffed, can't do anything, and I put my Frosty and my Nova Griff into the Greybeards. Yeah. Correct. And his Seekers are facing the other direction. He has no counter charges to speak of. And, I certainly respect Greybeards with great weapons, but we're talking about a lot of attacks, thunder stomps. He's debuffed from the Frosty. From the Frosty. So he's hitting my Griffin on 5s. Right, so I felt pretty confident with this, and I was also within range of my of all my buffs, because my guy, you can see the Master of the Kranich Tower there standing out in the open. And then I rally my Reaver Chariots, which was that was a little squeaky. I mean, they're on a Discipline 8 minimized there, but they passed that, and both of my other 2 units rallied as well on Discipline 8 minimized. So didn't get punished for that. I had to take them out of the leadership bubble because of the charge. So yeah. I was feeling pretty good here. So I think I think we skip a little bit ahead. Yeah. So let me just kind of quickly tell you, wrap up what happens this turn. So the Sea Guard with 9 attacks fail to get that last wound off of the Vengeance Seeker.
Oh no.
So do not manage to get a single 6, which was pretty disappointing. That's definitely a shame, because I think it makes it extremely difficult for me to get that objective basically at this point, right? So now I'm kind of fighting for a draw on the objective essentially. So that was a big shame. I do wipe that dwarf unit out, obviously, and so they're gone. And then this is where there was a little bit of drama that came up. So I had positioned, although I had not set it, I had positioned that Hold Guardian unit in the chaffing of the Reavers. You can kind of see from where the positioning is at. His unit does not have a lot of leeway to move across the frontage of my unit, right? But basically what happened was, from my perspective, when he charged that Reaver unit, he basically kind of like slid them over. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, completely on me in 2 respects. One, I should have just said it. There's no way for you to overrun into those Sea Guard. 2, I could have easily reformed the Sea Guard over to make this a non-issue. But as it was, I think with a little bit of kind of sloppy movement, I guess essentially on both of our parts, he had by an eighth of an inch or less, an overrun from those Reavers into my Sea Guard's flank, right? So we had a little bit of an argument. It was not a great outcome. It was not something that I was expecting. I think based on this picture, it's pretty clear. You can sort of see where the position of those Hold Guardians is. They just don't have a lot of room to shift over onto the front of the Reavers, but it is a front charge, right? Yeah. But anyways, long story short, it was clear from where the models were after that charge move was executed that he could overrun into the flank of Sea Guard. So he wipes the Reavers out, obviously, overruns into the flank of the Sea Guard. That plays a continuing combat. He wipes the Sea Guard out, and then he overruns into my Huntsman.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. So now you can go ahead and I guess just to kind of recap on what's happening, the Frost Phoenix and the Griffin are just munching happily through Greybeards, and I don't think they take any wounds, basically. So now you can move along to the next picture.
Kablamo. Yeah.
So he's charged into the Huntsman, and to be honest with you, was getting a little bit nervous here. He's got, full strength Hold Guardian unit in to the Huntsman. But I do, and I think this is sort of at the end of his magic phase, I believe. So a couple things happen. One, I put the Reaver Chariots into the rear of the Hold Guardians, right? And then 2, I brought the Flame Phoenix around, and I believe, at this point, the Flame Phoenix is now, you can kind of barely see him through the Frosty, but he's actually into the rear of the, sorry, I've moved, I've moved one too far.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So you can see the Flame Phoenix in the back, right, on that base there.
Yeah.
And he's charged my and he's now into my Huntsman. So here's my charges essentially in that following turn. He got a magical move on the King's Brick. It was not up on the hill. He managed to get it up on the hill, which was a shame because I was just trying to dispel it, but I just didn't roll that 5 on the 2 dice.
Yeah.
So he got that up there. But at this point, I've got my charges. So then you can kind of move along to the next picture that shows that my charges have now connected. There you go. So there's the Reaver Chariots in the rear of the Hold Guardians. I got the Flame Phoenix into the rear of the Greybeards, and that should spell the end of the Greybeards, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I also noticed that there was a possibility that if the Flame Phoenix and the Flyers broke that Greybeard unit, my Flame Phoenix could actually overrun into the rear or into the flank of the Hold Guardians in theory, right? And continue to fight that combat with a lot of support, right? So what ends up happening here was I end up I'm not sure if I wipe them out, but I basically crush the Hold Guardians with all of that. So what I thought was kind of a devastating result. Yeah. So I think either he failed or maybe he was prioritizing the hereditary. I can't remember, but I think I got the awakened strength buff off on the Reaver Chariots. So 3d6 strength 6, AP 3 impact hits. The Huntsman Prince is doing work as well. So I think I get them down. I do like 9 or 10 wounds to them.
Wow.
He does very little in response because he has to kind of split up his attacks a little bit.
Yeah.
And so basically I break them, and then I overrun the Huntsman Prince. There must have been some of them left. I choose to pursue away from the Reaver Chariots, which gets the Huntsman Prince out of the arc of the King's unit. And the Reaver Chariots overrun. And what I was really hoping for was to actually make the charge into the King's Brick. Obviously, I'd lose the Reaver Chariots, but I just wanted to pin them.
It would hold them for a turn. Yeah.
Exactly. I needed, if I recall correctly, I needed a 6, and I didn't get it. Which is a shame. That ended up costing me some points, but I was sort of chaffing him as a result of that. You can kind of envision where they'd be sort of like just about an inch short. And so I did finish off the Greybeards, and I basically, I think it's a little bit hard because I don't think we have a picture of it. Do we have one more picture?
Let's see here. Next pick I have is everything's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, I think what happened here was if you go back one, sorry everybody. So if you go back one, basically what he does is, because of where the Reaver Chariots were, he did a bit of an unexpected move. I thought he'd just take the Reaver Chariots, but he charges his BSB out into the Frost Phoenix.
Okay.
Because after they finish killing the Greybeard block, they're basically sitting there, right?
Yeah.
So he charges his BSB out into the Frost Phoenix, and I think he had an opportunity to, if he killed the Frost Phoenix, actually overrun into the Griffin.
Gotcha.
Which could have been quite big. I think I ended up leaving my Flame Phoenix where it was to essentially chaff the Seekers and prevent them from also going into that Frost Phoenix. So he charges the Flame Phoenix with the Seekers. He charges the Frosty with the BSB, and at this point, basically nobody can win that objective on the right-hand side. So with the death of the Hold Guardians, I've essentially secured a draw on the objective, which was kind of my overall best hope, I thought.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. So now if you move it forward, I can tell you kind of how everything wraps up. I love it. Like, you're like, the last picture, basically everything's gone. So essentially what happens is I do get lucky that first turn. I think I had the hereditary up, or there was something that made it a little bit shaky, but basically his BSB totally whiffs on the Frost Phoenix.
Oof.
I think it's not as easy as you would think, right? Especially with the magic in play and everything like that, but he basically he does like a wound or something like that, and the Frost Phoenix sticks its roll, so it doesn't explode. He doesn't get the overrun into the Griffin, which is great. Because he took that charge, I'm able to withdraw the Chariots, preserve their points, right?
Yeah.
The Flame Phoenix is doing some good work on the Seekers, but as we can probably imagine, since that's their intended target, they managed to grind through him eventually.
Yeah.
And he does ultimately, with the BSB, get the Frost Phoenix. I withdraw the Griffin because there's basically no percentage in that fight anymore.
Yeah.
I think I did at one point consider a charge into the BSB, but I was just like, if I fail it, King's Brick gets the Griffin. It just didn't feel like the right kind of risk reward.
Yeah, that was too swingy of a roll. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is essentially where it ends. I've gotten both Vengeance Seekers, I've gotten the Greybeards, I got the Hold Guardians, I gotten a couple of the small dwarf blocks, and he got both of the Phoenixes, one of the Sea Guard units, and the Reavers. And so it ended up a
12 to you. That's
with quite a lot of fighting.
I know, yeah, really. That was a lot of fighting. I didn't expect a 12, to be honest. I felt like he had at this point here, when he made that crazy double overrun with the Hold Guardians, man, I feel like you were in a tight spot. But it's kind of cool you pulled it out like that. I mean, obviously we can't talk about deployment because it was blind deployment, but any regrets as far as decisions during the game?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things. I kind of come back. I think it was Bobo who said, if you need an outcome to happen, don't under invest in it, right? And so, for example, I think that I really should have been prioritizing Awaken the Beast strength when I charged that Seaguard unit into that Vengeance Seeker, right?
Oh yeah.
That's a massive swing if that unit gets onto the objective and I'm able to get it out of there, right? That's what turns this from like a kind of a middling, smallish win to like a big win, right? And I thought that was like a huge opportunity, and I think I was prioritizing maybe like the Hereditary or something like that. I don't even know that I cast strength, or maybe I only saved 2 dice for it or something, so he was able to stop it. I think that should have been like my big play that magic phase, because getting that off, I did roll some 5s to wound him, right? I just didn't roll the 6s. So getting that off, finishing him, getting them onto the objective, would have prevented the overrun from the Hold Guardians, for example, right? I think the ceiling on this game for me would have gone way, way up if I'd gotten that Vengeance Seeker, and I just needed to do 1 wound. I think I was overconfident. I'm like, look, I'm going to hit with a bunch of these and get a 6. It'll work out. I should have put more into it. So that was a big one. That's kind of a tactical, decision. I think the overall strategy, like where I deployed, kind of how I was planning to play it, all of that worked out pretty well, avoiding the King's Brick.
Yeah, it really did. Stuff. And when he first deployed and he went just King's Brick to get the center token, everything else to get the right token, was I was a little worried for you. But really, man,
I think he played it right.
Yeah. So
I think there maybe would have been nice to have that Flame Phoenix over 1 turn earlier, and I can't remember. Do you mind going back to like my first move?
When you moved him way up here.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it now, and I wonder if maybe just there wasn't a spot to put him. But I think it would have been really nice to have him over 1 turn earlier. Because I think that if I could have like broken those Greybeards earlier, or if he could have been like waking the Vengeance Seekers, for example, or something, I think that could have maybe just freed me up that 1 turn earlier that I would have needed, right? Yeah. As it was, he was just kind of like fumble effing around over there for an extra turn that didn't really add any value. I didn't get any points out of it. Didn't help me any. So I think I definitely made a couple of mistakes in here, and the biggest one. And I come back to this a lot. It kind of goes back to like when you play online versus play in person. Like you shouldn't take those things for granted. Like put a marker on the unit, make him show you where it goes. Like to me, I felt like it was pretty close. But like once the model's been moved, it becomes like a he said, she said kind of thing. And so
you gotta declare things, and when you're playing in person, you gotta really have to declare your intent in a lot of spots. That's
and I've said that a few times, and I think I need to live by my advice a little bit better.
But that's a good way to start the tournament. 12 points. I'm on 13, so we're right in the same ballpark, and we'll see where round 2 takes us next. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.